Hey, this is Jerry Strauss, host of Hollywood Happy Place. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hi, this is Emily.
This is Lindsay.
And this is Elizabeth,
co-hosts of Beauties and Headcanons here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Once you are done with this episode, we hope you'll come check out our show, Beauties and Headcanons, where we talk nerdy to you about fandoms, fan fiction, and all pop culture for nerds that you can think of. A new show comes out every Friday.
Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Beauties and Headcanons. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Throughout history, the course of sports has been shaped by one thing: the fans.
From the moments you never dreamed of,
Wolpoff has saved the USA's life in this World Cup. Hall, the runner, loose ball, it's good. Gonzaga, the slipper still fits.
To the moments that still give you nightmares.
Behind the bag, it gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it. He's in. Patriots win the Super Bowl. Brady has his fifth.
through the good and the bad, fans have helped change the games we watch and the players we love.
They may not be the most logical people.
You are a factory of sadness. I'll see you Sunday.
But they know their teams better than anybody.
They'll blow in the ninth.
You may not always see them, but you know where to find them.
After all, there's nothing quite like the view from the cheap seats.
Broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network.
Grab a chair and enjoy all there is in
The cheap seats.
It's that time of the year, the Final Four. Here we are. No, this is not Jim Nance. This is your trusty host, Jeffrey Chiles, bringing you the cheap seats on this Wednesday morning, March 28th. Jeffrey Chiles, Max Wolpoff, back again, Max, and it's that time of year. It's the Final Four.
Yeah, and how many people have this Final Four predicted? What was the number, like 53 had this exact Final Four? Maybe?
53 people or 53%?
Yeah, 53 people, individuals. I don't even know how anyone could have seen this exact combination coming out of the field of 68.
You know, it must be blind, dumb luck, my friend. But in any event, we are here this morning for another episode, our Wednesday edition of the Cheap Seats Sports Podcast. Welcome into the Nosebleed section. My name is Jeffrey Chiles, along with my trusty co-host, Max Wolpoff. Well, thank you for listening to our show. You're listening to it maybe on phmedia.com, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spreaker, any platform that you may choose. You're listening to our show, and for that, we thank you for tuning in. You can follow me on Twitter at Geoff J. Chiles. Max?
At MAX_WOLPOFF.
All right, follow us on Twitter.
Are you ready for this, Jeff? Are you ready for this Final Four?
I am so pumped, and you know why I'm pumped, because the University of Michigan Wolverines are in the Final Four again, the second one under John Beilein. If it wasn't for Loyola, they'd be coming out of absolute nowhere, finishing only fourth in the Big Ten this year. But they are doing it defensively, different than they've ever done it in the past. They will guard you, they will block shots, they will get hands in passing lanes. This Michigan team, right there along with Loyola, top 10 in the year in scoring defense. That matchup, I mean, we can get into it right away if you want, but that is both these Final Fours are going to be great, but that one is going to be really intriguing for me.
Yeah, let's jump straight into the Michigan-Loyola matchup. And what impressed me most about Michigan's victory over Florida State was how frequently their hands were in the air, their hands were up, they were playing sound defensive defense, and it passed the eye test. But when I looked back at the stats, according to ESPN, 90% of FSU shots were contested. 90%.
I saw that. That basically means that every 10 shots that the Seminoles took, Michigan was contesting 9 of them. That is very rare to see that number, and that says a lot about John Beilein and really his secret weapon this year. Assistant coach Luke Yaklich brought in more for his defensive prowess, and boy, has he really changed the mindset of this team that normally under John Beilein, they're going to be top 15, top 10 in the country in offensive efficiency. It's a complete opposite this year, and a lot of that credit goes to Luke Yaklich for being able to take a smaller lineup like Michigan has and be able to go mano-a-mano, toe-to-toe with Florida State's big Nigerian dudes who are rendered practically ineffective in the second half.
Florida State was just throwing up shots, trying their luck, and trying your luck in basketball is not a sound strategy for winning a game.
No, it's certainly not a good strategy. I mean, I'd heard all week about Florida State's size, their rebounding, how their guard is going to be able to beat Michigan and beat Xavier Simpson at the perimeter one-on-one. Absolutely proven false. Everybody picked against Michigan. I invite that. Charles Barkley, Kenny Williams, all these experts, Jay Billis picking against Michigan. Keep doing it because I love it. I love to see the Maize Blue keep on winning, keep picking against Michigan. But to your point, Max, about their defense, and obviously I watched them all year, the key with Michigan is they make it very difficult for you, either part of a defense, to set up your half court, and they get back very quickly in transition. KenPom, somebody has tracked this, which is amazing to me, tracked some of the better teams in transition defense in the country, and Michigan is right there. They just refuse to give up any easy buckets, and then you add in Xavier Simpson being locked down on the perimeter. Charles Matthews can affect things with his length. Muhammad Ali Abdur-Rahman will guard you till the sun comes up the next day, and then you have Teskey in the middle. 63 points per game given up. That's 8th in the country, and they are just been excellent on defense. There's no other way to say it.
And they're going to run up against a Loyola Chicago team that if something has really impressed throughout this tournament, they have done a fantastic job shooting 2-point shots. They've been great inside the arc. The numbers at 60% of their inside the arc shots. And the Ramblers really do have that knack for quickness and that knack for the final buzzer beater. They've won most of their games on the last possession.
Yeah, and that's where I think maybe the run might end for them. I'm not saying they're not for real. They are for real. But look at who they had to beat to get here. They had to beat Miami, middle of the ACC. They had to beat Nevada, conference champion, I believe, still a quality team. And then Kansas State was absolutely blitzkrieged by them in that final game. And K-State didn't exactly finish tops in the Big 12 either. But Loyola, they will make you work on both ends every possession on defense, just like Michigan can do. Michigan cannot have another cold shooting night. They were 4 of 22 from 3 against Florida State. They just can't do that again and get away from it because Clayton Custer, Loyola's top point guard, like you said, that speed, getting to the inside of the arc, having the handle to score on anybody. The matchup that I'm interested in seeing in this game is Custer versus Simpson because those are two elite point guards. They will defend to their last breath out there on the perimeter, and we will see whichever point guard can create off the bounce. I think will have a lot to go in determining who wins this game.
And even if it is like Loyola has done, where they drive the paint, draw two people, and kick it outside, they've done that a lot. That has been a consistent strategy for the Ramblers, and it's worked to deadly effect. They've done a great job opening up other people for distance shots. The trouble is whether they make it or not.
Yeah, their offense has not been great, kind of like Michigan's in the tournament, and that's really the question there. But, I mean, during the season, again, they're playing against Missouri Valley competition, made 40% of their threes during the season. Like you said, in the tournament, 60% of shots inside the arc. They haven't really been able to do that so far in the tournament because in every single one of their losses during the year, if you look at the entire scope of the season, they scored under 60. They've had problems scoring points against better competition even when they did play Florida and they beat Tennessee. They struggled shooting the basketball. And at the end of the day, they haven't played an offensive team. Inconsistent, sure, but they haven't played an offensive team that has the size like Michigan with Matthews and Wagner, has the shooting ability like Simpson and Duncan Robinson. An 11 seed has never won a national title. They don't have history on their side, but they've certainly earned to get here. But I think ultimately this game will come down to which team can make enough shots. I don't think Loyola can outscore Michigan, and I don't think they can hold them in check. I think Michigan wins this in a close game.
And Loyola Chicago is running into the same problem that the 3-11 seeds before them, the George Masons and the VCUs of the world, have run into. They just don't have the same amount of talent. They have maybe 2 great players, and the rest of the team are team role guys that are good for your size and good for your conference. But Butler had Gordon Hayward and Shelvin Mack.
Future draft picks.
Yeah, lottery picks in Hayward's case when they went on to the final and lost. They just did not have the talent to match up.
Moving on to our next semifinal in the Final Four, Kansas and Villanova. And if we talk about Loyola and Michigan playing suffocating defense, we're talking about Kansas and Villanova in the sense that these two teams can shoot the nets out. Devontae Graham playing great in that Duke game for Kansas and winning in the Elite Eight on Sunday. Azubuike, I talked about him in previous podcasts. Kansas finally has Azubuike back at full health. But this is a game, too, where we talked about Loyola and Michigan having, the matchup being at the point guard spot. This game, too, while both Villanova and Kansas have good size, if Devontae Graham gets going, and by that I mean he can drive and dish, he can hand out 7 assists per game with this fifth in the country, that's going to be the key for Kansas because and the Jayhawks also have that size that might frustrate Villanova, and Villanova hasn't had really a game all year where they've been frustrated. Will Kansas's size be enough to hold down the Wildcats, or will Villanova's ball movement and shooting rule the day?
And with Azubuike, he's only going to be a factor when he's on the floor. He hasn't played more than 25 minutes in any tournament game this season.
And a lot of foul trouble this year.
Yeah, and he's a 41% free throw shooter, so you don't necessarily want a liability like that on the floor in the final minutes of a game where inbound the ball to him, foul him, and he's missed half of his free throws this season. This is going to be troubling for Kansas if he can't get going.
Here's the thing. Like you said with Azubuike, him fouling out is going to be disastrous. It's going to be the absolute worst-case scenario for Bill Self and the Jayhawks because then Kansas is going to have to match Villanova shot for shot. One of their better interior defenders is fouled out and on the bench. But Kansas, whether it's Azubuike or not because of the foul trouble or the minutes, Malik Newman will be the X factor in this game for Kansas. He's led them in scoring 6 times in the last 7 games in the postseason. We saw what he did against Duke with 32 games. If Kansas is going to challenge Villanova in this game, it's Malik Newman going off.
They've been able to survive, and part of that was because Duke just did not have the endurance to go through the overtime. They did not make their shots in the extra frame. Kansas is going to run up against an offense in Villanova that knows how to shoot the ball.
Top scoring team in the country. I mean, they've done it all year, and they've done it against a pretty solid Big East, 86 points per game. I really think this game is going to come down to a back-and-forth type of game, really hot shooting for both teams. The one scenario, I think, Max, where I give Kansas a puncher's chance right here is Kansas can throw out 3 elite guards at you. We talked about Devontae Graham and Malik Newman, Mahalik as well, a really tough name to pronounce. But both those 3 KU guards can drive the ball, they can shoot, they can find open teammates. I mean, Kansas was averaging around 16 assists a game all year. This is the only situation where Kansas can use both the 3-guard lineup and their size, to get around Villanova.
And Villanova ran into this 2 years ago when they won the national title. They were one of very few teams that were playing that 3-guard lineup. They were able to easily create mismatches. It perplexed a lot of defenses. No one knew how to play against them. This year, everyone has it's a copycat world, and they've decided to copy the best. So they've copied Villanova, and they now are able to better match up down low and up high. Everyone has crafty guards. Villanova isn't the same unique team that can march into the tournament. They're still a good team, but now they're running into the matchup problem.
Yep, that could certainly be the problem. Kansas and Villanova. I mean, again, what saved Villanova in the past is the three-point shot. If you're Jay Wright and you know that you have 6 players that can score double figures and you have 3 of those 6 that are shooting 41% or better from 3, Villanova, Kansas, it's going to be a classic. It's going to come down right to the middle. I think, like you said, Kansas's one chance is if they have Azubuike still on the floor and they rebound enough Villanova misses to get things going the other way. But still, I mean, this is such an even game. On the other hand, if Villanova shoots the 3 prolifically, the Wildcats will be taking home the trophy.
My guess, and this is a total shot in the dark, but my guess is Villanova's not going to have as bad of an offensive game as they had against Texas Tech, where they really needed to rely on their defense. I don't think they're going to have a second game like that, especially not this upcoming weekend. I'm starting to come into your camp where you've been since the beginning of this tournament talk. I'm starting to believe in the Wildcats.
There he is, Max Wolpoff, coming over to the light side, coming over to my side of the equation, and having faith in Villanova. We'll take a break right now. A few things we can get to later on in this podcast. Odell Beckham, will he stay with the Giants? What is his situation there? Will they pay him to keep him there? Maybe some MLB opening day talk as well. And then our specialty later on in the podcast, breaking down the Frozen Four. 3 Big Ten schools, a banner year for the league. Can they bring home the best banner? We'll talk about all that and more after the break. This is Max Wolpoff, Jeffrey Chiles, the Cheap Seats on Public House Media.
What's up, everybody? This is Christian Heimel, host of Press Row here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Press Row, where we talk about the biggest issues in sports with the analysts, experts, and reporters who cover them. No nonsense, hard-hitting interviews on the sports topics you're talking about. A new show comes out every single Thursday. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Press Row. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
Going retro here on the Cheap Seats. This bringing me back to the early 2000s as we hear Shaggy and Who Let the Dogs Out on the Cheap Seats. What do you think of that, Max?
This was the jam of my childhood. I loved that song. It was so good.
Well, we probably thought it was good back then, but not so much now. Any event, we're back here in the Cheap Seats on this Wednesday morning, March 28th. Max Wolpoff, Jeffrey Chiles again. Follow us on all our social media platforms. Cheap Seats Sports Podcast on Facebook. You can follow our Twitter accounts. Do us a favor and visit the Public House Media page, phmedia.com. Also follow Public House Media on Facebook and Twitter. Breaking down the Final Four in the first segment, there's been a lot of movement and a lot of interesting conversation recently, Max, about both free agency in the NFL and some big names that could be staying put or could be moving. Obviously, the biggest of those names and a lot of controversy right now is the vaunted wide receiver for the New York Football Giants, Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah, because he is a very valuable wide receiver. He is very good at his job. But is he worth the money that he's going to be asking for? Great question. Ask somebody else.
Well, ask us. That's why we're here in the Cheap Seats, to give you our unsolicited or maybe solicited opinions, sitting up here in the middle of nowhere. I don't think realistically that this will happen. Odell Beckham Jr. commands too much money. He's too valuable, even with all the off-field stuff, for the Giants to realistically make this happen. Trades in the NFL in general are very, very rare and few and far between. This is the one player in the NFL that, outside of a quarterback, is the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. Normally, I say you don't throw this kind of money. He had made, I think, what was it, $8 million a year, and now wants something in the neighborhood of $12 to $16 million or something, and that's astronomical amount of money. And the Giants are in a position where whether they re-sign him, which I think is in their best interest, or they don't, either way, wherever he goes, teams aren't going to care about the off-field stuff. They're going to make sure he's got his mind right, and then they're going to pay him whatever the market price is.
Now, I have his salary cap situation up via sporttrack.com. How much money do you think he's making this upcoming season?
Well, previously, what was he made last year? $8.5 million?
Last year? No, last year
Yeah.
he was not. That's this year.
This year, okay.
Yeah, this year he's making 8.5. Last year he had a cap hit of $3,311,000.
And the contract's up at the end of this season, correct?
Yes, he is a unrestricted free agent at the end of this season.
So the question, how much do I think he will make coming up, correct?
Yeah, how much do you think he's... okay, the question was for 2018, so you already answered that with the $8.5 million.
Yep.
You already got it right. Congratulations.
So how much do I think he is worth or he will make?
How much do you think he's going to make in 2019? Regardless of the team that signs him, how much do you think he's going to make?
Per season?
Just give a guess. Give an estimation. His market value in the unrestricted free agent market. How much do you think he makes?
I will
Guys,
say...
he's
I'm
25 years old. Come on.
I'm probably going on the lower side here. I'm going to say 12 or 13 million.
Really?
Yep.
All right. 12 to 13? I don't... That's a very club-oriented signing right there.
Well, what do you? I mean, we have yet to hear your opinion on this. I've sort of thought that the Giants really are in a no-win situation, or that they're sort of their feet are to the fire, and they have to sign him because when John Morrow was asked about this, he was very vague, and maybe this is just playing his hand. He said, quote, "I can't answer one way or the other. We're not shopping him. When you're coming off a season when you're 3-13 and played as poorly as we played, I wouldn't say that anyone is untouchable." Is that trying to bait other teams and offering more, and the Giants matching that, or where is the fact versus fiction?
Well, here's the thing. Suddenly, sports owners and general managers have gotten wise to the fact that that players will be cheap and young only so long. And the Giants have been bad for years. They don't need to sign him long term if they're not going to contend. Odell Beckham Jr. will want to win a championship. He'll want to get his glory now while he can. I don't think he owes the Giants anything. He is very much likely going to be paid a lot of money. I don't think that team is going to be the New York Giants. The Giants need to go through a deep and systematic rebuild to get to be a better team.
Here's the thing, though. While that's true in one sense, we know what the New York media market is. We know how absolutely huge it is. And that a player like him, I think, talent or not, regardless of that, needs to be in New York City. Their general manager, Dave Gettleman, knows. He said, you don't quit on talent. They know how important he is to have. The Giants last year averaged 23 points in the 3 games in which he played, and then without him, 13.6. And I think you also can't undersell the fact that Eli Manning's completion percentage without him is lower. His touchdowns were lower. Every stat across the board without Beckham there is hurting the Giants. And again, he's still only 25. I don't think if he were ever to be traded, at least now, it's not the time.
Then when? When do the Giants go through the rebuild that they know they need to go through? Eli Manning is getting old. Their offense is out of date. They do not have the roster to compete next season. When do they go through the rebuild?
Well, I mean, I think they keep Beckham just on sheer talent. I'm not looking at that more in the sense of like a rebuild. I know you are, and don't get me wrong, I know at some point they're going to have to go through said rebuild, but for the Giants and for their own sanity and putting people in the seats, Beckham needs to be there. But what if they trade him and they get maybe a first-round pick or a fourth-round pick for him? Where do they go with the rebuild? And if Beckham is finally gone, I mean, I guess you have to weigh. You're going to be mediocre now to being just bad for about 5 years and then getting better. What's the timeline for you?
Oh, boy. I mean, the New York media probably won't tolerate a lengthy rebuild. I mean, the New York Rangers were hilarious. They announced they were going to sell at the trade deadline, and then at the trade deadline, once the bell rang, it's like, okay, cool, thanks. That was fun. That was a fun 2-week rebuild. The New York won't tolerate a 2 to 3 year gap where the Giants just stink. The Giants basically need to go through a 1-year destruction followed by a great draft, followed by great talent coming in, and followed by contending for at least a division championship the next year. trading Beckham will get you a huge share of market value. He is still young at 25. He is still good, and he still can bring in the touches. He can bring in the catches that other wide receivers just aren't going to be able to make with his talent. He can command a huge value. I'm in the boat to trade him.
He can, but here's the thing. If Manning retires before Beckham leaves New York, which is a possibility, if he does, and the Giants, what pick do they have in the draft this year, the next couple years, and they draft a quarterback with their pick, you still have Beckham in his prime with a, albeit rookie signal caller.
Yeah, but that if the Giants draft a quarterback this year, even if he's not the best on the board, and they train him for a year within their system, there is a chance that they can go through that transition a little better. But I'm still in the boat. Trade Beckham and get assets, get picks for the next year's draft. Sorry, New York.
Max Wolpoff is feeling as if he's personally offended the entire New York metropolitan area.
I'm used to that feeling.
I didn't want to, really quick, I didn't want to rub it in, but I was going to say something or send you a text when Michigan beat BU in the NCAA tournament. I went against my better judgment, and I held against it.
I'm happy you did, because I was not watching the game.
Yeah. Well, I just had to play off your comments about offending the New York media market and you being in Boston. So there you go. The Terriers are out. Michigan avoids the Terrier curse this year. They're not expected to win, so they will win. We'll get to the Frozen Four near the end of our Cheap Seats podcast this morning. Moving on, Max, to baseball. And it was quite an adventurous offseason for Major League Baseball. Of course, you had Giancarlo Stanton joining Aaron Judge in New York City. You have a lot of things happening. What are your first impressions of the offseason in Major League Baseball?
My first impression is that the haves got better and the have-nots sold to the haves. The Marlins went through a giant fire sale. They're going to stink this year unless they somehow catch lightning in a bottle and just win a bunch of games for no real reason. The haves, like the Yankees, like the Nationals even, like the Red Sox, like the Astros, and like the Cubs, they all got better. All of the expected matchups heading into this upcoming season, they all got better. The teams like the Diamondbacks have quietly been getting okay. Teams like the Rockies have been good for a while. They built the right way. But then you run into the Astros, and they are just head and shoulders, you might even say out of this world, above the rest of the league.
They're almost in space, being the Astros, aren't they?
That was the joke.
Yeah, the Astros are coming back, World Series champions. Justin Verlander leading that rotation. We all know now with the salary cap and what happened with a lot of these moves that the payroll just keeps skyrocketing every year. And you might not be surprised at all to learn that the Yankees, well, maybe surprisingly, are only the 7th highest payroll. Do you think with some of these offseason moves that the payrolls of these teams will continue to go up, or that they will fluctuate or change in any way? The Red Sox, number one, outpacing the Dodgers, who are tops there for the longest time. I guess, in your opinion, grading some of these moves against what the spending and the payroll are for these teams.
I think that the teams got wise to the game, and much to the chagrin of the free agents that were available, like J.D. Martinez, who got signed late, teams have realized that the best years of a baseball player are when they are young and when they are cheap. And that is probably going to be the way of the future. Teams are just trying to get young, get fast, get strong. And that means not spending a lot of money on expensive veterans, even if they are just coming off a 40 home run season and they're only 31. You're still 31. And if you can get a 26-year-old who can hit 30 home runs, that might be more valuable to you in the long term than a 30-year-old that just hit 40.
Could be the case. That could be what we see, I guess, ends up happening. Looking ahead to our spring training is done. Now the season starts on Thursday. And when you look at all the offseason moves, and you think about the Yankees now with the star power they have added, the Indians as well, Can either of them catch Houston in the American League? And on the other side, will the Dodgers hold off Washington and Chicago and get back to the World Series? I guess who, in your mind, Max, being our baseball guys, put themselves in the best position to win the division, get a top seed in the postseason, and get back to the World Series?
I think the Yankees have positioned themselves very well. They've got a murderer's row batting order, and their pitching has just gotten a year better. Yeah, they brought back CC Sabathia, but they also brought back an improved Masahiro Tanaka. He had an okay spring, but the spring rotation is not going to be indicative of how the major league team plays. There's a lot going on in spring. Guys are really trying to just get their rhythm in the month in Florida or in Arizona. I think the Yankees are a team to beat this year for sure, and if they can beat the Astros in the limited times they see them, I might be swayed to think they're World Championship contenders. But for right now, the World Series is, I'm thinking, heading back to the Astros. They've still got that amazing lineup that can both hit and field.
And young talent, something that we really haven't talked about this year as far as new faces that fans will see on major league rosters this year. We don't have to go division by division or even team by team, but of New York and Boston and LA in the big markets, I have a list here in front of me I thought was interesting. The top impact prospects by each team, and I don't know how closely you follow prospects, or I guess rookies we could even throw in there, but who has the young talent that could either make an impact or put themselves in position for future success?
I think the Atlanta Braves are doing their rebuild right. The Atlanta Braves have a fantastic Nationals killer in Freddie Freeman, who just somehow continues to be great every time. But they also have a guy in Ronald Acuna Jr., who they're going to put in the minor leagues simply because if they keep him there for a month, his arbitration clock doesn't start until next season. So the Braves aren't looking at this championship this year with the Nationals in the NL East and saying, yeah, we have a chance. No. Atlanta, calm yourself. You don't have a chance. Even
Acuna, if you have Acuna's the Braves' top prospect. I mean, he's right there in the top 100 rankings. The NL East, he should have an impact there along with the Nationals. And then finally, as we wrap up both our free agency talk in the NFL and now looking ahead our season preview to baseball, what are you looking forward to this season, whether it's players, performances, storylines, pitching staffs, things that might have a greater bearing on the postseason? What are you looking for?
I'm looking forward to the year-long answer to the following question. Is this the year of the home run or the strikeout? Last year, it was the year of the home run, and this upcoming year, I don't know if the pendulum is going to swing back to the pitchers because suddenly they figured out how to pitch to Aaron Judge. The three true outcomes of baseball are walks, strikeouts, and home runs. You only need a hitter, a pitcher, and a catcher to have any of those three things happen. And so many of baseball's plays were those three outcomes. I don't know if the pitchers have gotten the advantage. I think the offense will still reign supreme this year, and I'm curious to see if this is another record-breaking year for home runs.
Max Wolpoff giving you the lowdown and the hot stove on everything in Major League Baseball. We'll take a break right now. Really quick, we'll throw out our poll question. We will reiterate this later on in the program. A little bit of an interesting one for you that you can vote on today on our website and on our Cheap Seat Sports Podcast Facebook page. And the question is thus: the Super Bowl or the first day of the NCAA Tournament? Which would you rather have off? Max and I will discuss later on in the program. And when we come back, the Frozen Four. It's a banner year for the Big Ten, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan. Heck, Duluth is even in the Midwest. A Midwest-centric Frozen Four. What does that mean? Who will come out on top in St. Paul? College hockey when we come back on the Cheap Seats on the Public House Media Network.
This is Katie, co-host of Coffee with Keith and Katie here on Public House Media. Once you are done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Coffee with Keith and Katie, where we talk about the adventures of our daily lives and relationship. A new show comes out every Tuesday and Friday at 8:30 p.m. Central. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Coffee with Keith and Katie. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Yo, VIP. Let's kick it.
Welcome back to the Cheap Seat Sports Podcast. You, my friend, are loyal listener to the VIP today because you get to hear us talk college hockey. Big props to our producer, Christian Heimel, for the Ice Baby rejoin right there. Very appropriate given our discussion of college hockey. It's that time of the year. Most people, they're hoop-centric, Max. They're nuts about college basketball. You and I love ourselves some college hockey. Love the skill in college hockey, the growth of the game, the overall talent level, and the purity of college hockey. And those intimacy of those rinks. I feel like I'm Jim Nance doing an open. I'm just so pumped talking college hockey, buddy.
Yeah, is it a bad thing that when I heard the intro to that song, I was thinking it was Under Pressure by Queen?
It has that beat to it, doesn't it?
It has the exact same beat, and I still get confused when I hear the opening riff. It's like, oh, it's Queen. No, it's not.
Well, we're not going to talk about Queen. We're going to talk about, in my opinion, the best sport in the world, the most fun college sport to be at in a rink. There's nothing to me like being in a college hockey rink. On my bucket list is going to a Frozen Four. I've never been there. I wished I'd gone in 2011 when Michigan made it. But guess what? They're back again. If you have that kind of coin to drop, you can go. And I got my choice. I can go to San Antonio, St. Paul. In any event, those are going to be very expensive tickets. But Michigan back in the field of the Frozen Four this year. They'll be taking on Notre Dame, a team that that's been their rival for the better part of 30 years in college hockey, first in the CCHA and now in the Big Ten. And on the other side, surprisingly, Ohio State upsetting the defending national champion Denver Pioneers. They will take on Duluth, and yet again, I won't get into Frozen Four or regional sites, but Duluth getting a basic home game just a few miles from St. Paul.
Yes, and that's going to be a great spot for Minnesota Duluth to have at least some measure of local traction. They're going to bring in the local fans.
Oh, how great for them! Let's float them. How great! No, I'm just kidding.
Stop it, you! This is a Big Ten celebration, especially if it's an all Big Ten final with Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Ohio State. This will be a chalk it up and count up the money year for the Big Ten. It's going to be huge for their conference and for their hockey prospects.
I am really just kind of savoring that and taking that in because fans for years, whether it was College Hockey News or USCHO.com, read those sites, by the way, if you want to get into college hockey and really grow your fandom. Two great sites. And I do a few things for USCHO. But all those arguments since 2013, when the Big Ten was formed, oh, it's the Little Six, oh, the Big Ten's a joke, we missed the WCHA, we missed the CCHA, wah, wah, WCHA fans, I get it, you're upset. I missed the commuter league that the CCHA was. You could go to Kalamazoo, Big Rapids. It was a great league. It was a very intimate league. But college hockey has grown, and in order for it to be on a big stage, it needs to have a big-name conference because nobody knows what Hockey East or NCHT is unless you're a diehard fan. But I am so thrilled as a Big Ten fan, as a Big Ten alumnus, and really with Duluth Midwest, the Big Ten has 3 schools in the Frozen Four, and this can only grow the interest, the production of these programs, and the recruiting. It's awesome for the Big Ten.
And how great is it that one of your matchups is Michigan Notre Dame? Back in the regular season, Notre Dame, number 1 team in the country, 2 weeks in a row. They're walking into that series against Michigan, and they get their butts kicked hard. Michigan swipes them up and down the ice, and the Wolverines handed them a sweep in their own barn. What a moment for Notre Dame to have a chance at redemption and a chance for Michigan to continue the beatdown.
And ironically, like the week or two before we started the cheap seats, you and I, without even planning it, maybe this spoke to what the universe had in store, you and I happened to see each other in the arena. We were at that game in South Bend. I mean, you can't get more serendipitous than that. That was amazing. We can talk about that really quickly.
Yeah, that was my brother's birthday weekend, and we had never been to Notre Dame. He's been kind of what they call a Subway alumni at Notre Dame. So he just kind of affiliates with the school with no real tie to it. So we decided to go, and this was the game he wanted to see. He wanted to see Notre Dame, Michigan. So I, as the contrarian, went as a Michigan fan just to oppose my brother and be a bit of a thorn in his side.
Very happy. I appreciate it, buddy.
And it turns out the week we were organizing to meet for this podcast, it's like, all right, so when do we want to call? Nope, let's meet at this hockey game and talk about things.
Well, I think that spoke a lot about the future of us and of this podcast being college hockey savants. But, Max, let's get into it. Let's get into these matchups. Michigan, Notre Dame, having watched both of them extensively all year. Michigan is a different team since that series. Actually, it was a home-and-home. They beat Notre Dame Friday in South Bend and then Sunday in Ann Arbor. Sunday was an absolute great game, a one-goal game that came down to the final split second. Michigan, if you look at these teams, three of these teams in the Frozen Four this year are very, very skilled offensively. Minnesota State is the best in the country by far. They've scored 153 goals on the year. Michigan in the top 10. They've scored 133. And then Ohio State right behind them at 130. These are offensively gifted teams. Three of them outside of Notre Dame, who's more of a defensive shell kind of a team. But that series from Michigan changed the fortunes of their season. They've won something like 13 games since that game on Friday in February. And for Michigan, it starts with that top line, one of the best scoring lines in the country, Danks, Marody, and Calderon. Dexter Danks, Cooper Maroney, and Tony Calderon. A line that, mind you, had to face that vaunted BU top line of players going in the draft or soon to be drafted, and they shut down that top BU line. This is a team that has a lot of rhythm and a lot of in sync with each other right now. Tony Calderon, the goal-scoring senior, Marody, more of the passer. Michigan can hurt you on the top line, and even with players like Jake Slaker on that second line who can put the puck in the net.
And for BU, one of those members of that top line, Jordan Greenway, he's already going to St. Paul in the form of an entry-level contract with the Minnesota Wild. So either way, he was going to head to St. Paul.
Yeah, and he got his in that game against Michigan. He scored that very impressive wrist shot goal early in the game, but really was amazed that was a close game with BU. Michigan emerged the better team in the third period, got 3 third-period goals, and got a goal from a guy that you need this time of year, Nick Boca, the Ann Arbor native, scoring his first goal of the season, and what a better time to do it, putting Michigan over the top. And I look at Notre Dame, and they've gotten excellent goaltending from Cale Morris all year. They can score as well, not at the clip of these other teams, but I think that matchup will be determined not by the offenses, but by Hayden Levine for Michigan and Cale Morris for Notre Dame. Which goaltender is going to make the better save to take his team to Saturday night?
And back in their regular season series, it was Levine who had that. Morris had 2 off nights when Michigan came to town and when they went up to Michigan. And he cannot have an off night on April 5th. He has to be on against a resurgent and dynamite Michigan roster.
Well, you're exactly right. And Michigan, I think with Mel Pearson amazingly getting them to the Frozen Four in their first year, he has no fear. He was an assistant under Berenson for 25 years, amazingly taking this team that won, listen to this, Max, Michigan won 13 games last year, and they're back in the Frozen Four. That is remarkable coaching. You know Mel Pearson is going to have his squad ready. Michigan's beat Notre Dame twice in the regular season, as we talked about. They have no fear going into this Thursday night game.
Now, the real Big Ten question, who comes out of the other matchup? Because Ohio State has their hands full with a battle-tested Minnesota Duluth team.
Yeah, a Minnesota Duluth team that can score at a very high clip, and a team that they took out Minnesota State to get here. They're very talented up front on their top lines as well. I misspoke earlier. Minnesota State leads the country in goals, but Duluth is right up there, top 20 in goals. They score over 3 goals a game. Ohio State that is going to be a game of contrasting styles because while Ohio State has talent on the front line with Tanner Lisinski and some of their other players under head coach Steve Rolik, they've gotten stingy goaltending all season long, much more of a defensive team. I mean, what do you see happening in that game? Because you have Ohio State in their defensive posture, and then you have Minnesota Duluth, who can put the puck in the net as well. That is going to be a very interesting battle between those two.
My strategy with watching contrasting teams play is I want to watch the first period. However the first period goes, I see that as how the rest of the game will go. If the offensive team has a lead after 20 minutes, that tends to be enough to stop a defensive team. Ohio State can score. They do have a good offense. They do have decent offensive scoring numbers. But Minnesota Duluth is just a little bit better than them in that regard. I don't know if there will be a big third period comeback of any sort from either squad. I think whoever wins the first 20 has probably the best shot to win the rest of the game.
I think you're right. I think that'll set the tone for the game. And then you always have the sort of cliche, but the X factor of can Ohio State take the Bulldog fans out of their element, out of their, de-energizing them because that building is going to be ramped up. And it's going to be tough for Ohio State. First time for them in the Frozen Four since 1998. They've only made 2. Michigan now a college hockey record 25th appearance. I think Duluth is in their 4th appearance, and the Notre Dame in their 4th as well. Only Duluth and Michigan have one national title, so a little bit more experience there. But getting back into this matchup, Ohio State has some really gifted players that have either already been drafted. Tanner Lisinski, 46 points for the sophomore, and then followed by Mason Jobst, the junior who scored 21 goals this season. I don't really expect that Ohio State's going to get into a shootout. They're going to forecheck for a little bit, probably drop back if they get a lead. Not a shell, but they'll probably drop back, be more responsible in their own zone, make sure to clear and get the puck out. And both these games, I think either way, however they shake out, will be close games. Who do you have emerging and playing for the national title?
I have an Ohio State-Michigan final.
Wow.
I am so ready for that.
A dream come true for me.
I, as a hockey fan, can look at that and say, yep, that'll probably be the matchup. But as a true sports fanatic, I can look at that matchup and say, I want it right now. Give it to me. It is going to be epic. Can you imagine for a second all of the hype around a Michigan-Ohio State game, the game? Every football year, it comes down to the game. Imagine that. Now you're playing for a championship. Now you're indoors, and everyone is ready to kill you. It's going to be great.
This would be a dream scenario, and I think ultimately for the sport of college hockey, Ohio State's not a blue blood. Let's be honest. They've had a couple of good years. They're not a blue blood like Michigan or even Duluth, I guess you could say, a rising blue blood. But those two programs, what that would do for the sport of college hockey, hopefully you as the listener, as the fan, would tune in because college hockey, it's a great game. It's a fun game. These guys are humble players. They're not garish, and they're not all about themselves like you see in college football or college basketball, as much as I love those two sports. This is a game that would be huge for college hockey, huge for the Big Ten. This would be as rough and tumble, bloody, brutal, physical game that you're going to see. And behind that, 2 teams with great offenses and 2 teams with extravagant goaltending. I think it's going to be tough for Michigan to beat Notre Dame because Notre Dame's going to have revenge on their mind. Michigan has the experience of beating the Irish this year. This now a neutral site. I think Levine would have to outplay Cale Morris, and then, all fairness to him, he would have to outplay Sean Romeo in net for the Buckeyes, who's got a .927 save percentage. He's got 22 wins. He's been so good for the Scarlet and Gray. It'd be a tall order for Hayden Levine to out-duel both Cale Morris and Sean Romeo in back-to-back games. But I'm with you. I think Michigan gets to the championship game. I think it's Ohio State, and not just because I don't want to be the homer, but Ohio State has had Michigan's number. They've beaten them all 4 times they've played. It's tough to do that a 5th time. We talk about college basketball. It's tough to beat a team 3 times in a season. It would be very tough for Ohio State to beat a motivated Michigan team, 5-0, sweep them on the year. I think Ohio State, it pains me to say this, is a better team than Michigan. It's probably going to be like an overtime ending. Not going to say Michigan can't do it, but I think Ohio State shockingly wins their first ever national title.
And can you imagine what that would do, the buzz that would generate around college hockey? Suddenly, they have a championship of two major schools that already don't like each other in other athletic events. Now you have it in a championship setting. Are you serious? Give me that on the main ESPN channel any night of the week. That is the drama of college sports personified in one game.
And personified in, I know I'm a little bit biased, but the greatest rivalry in college sports, in any sport, all due respect to North Carolina. That's a basketball rivalry. Michigan-Ohio State, it is rough and tumble. It is, wanting to punch them in the mouth every single game, literally and figuratively. That game is a slobber knocker, and it will be again. Just a great time for college hockey, a great time for the Big Ten. Hopefully a game like this could elevate the sport even more, for a smaller kind of sport that only has 61 schools that play D1 hockey. But it's going to be great. I am so pumped. I'm so ready for this game. I would love to see Michigan win their 10th national title. I think, just looking at it objectively, Ohio State's been better, and they pull it off.
Now, I got a question for you to end this, to just maybe wrap up this segment. How much do you think tickets are in the upper bowl of the XL Center?
You love to get me with these because I'm not good with math. I'm just not good at guessing contracts or ticket prices. This game, with maybe not college hockey blue bloods, there's no Hockey East this year.
Let's go to the semifinals. How much do you think tickets at semifinals are? You get two games for the price of one.
Yep, in the upper bowl?
Yep, upper bowl.
Just the ticket price at the door, just online, just from the main seller right now.
Yep, right now.
I would say somewhere between $80 and $100.
It's $85.
Oh my goodness, I got it!
Congratulations!
That's great. I mean, look at that compared to trying to get a ticket to the college football playoff for the Final Four. Just no comparison.
No way. No way.
All right, who do you have? You picked Ohio State, right?
I'm with you. I'm picking Ohio State. They've been playing very well, and they do have Michigan's number right now.
They do. There it is. College hockey breaking down by the minutia. Jeffrey, Chiles, Max, Wolpoff. Follow us on Twitter. Vote in our poll question today. What would you rather have off? Super Bowl Sunday or the day after or the day starting the NCAA tournament? Answer that question on our Facebook poll question. Go vote right now. We'll come back. We'll wrap it up. Get to our Weird and Wild Wednesday. After this, you're listening to the Cheap Seats on the Public House Media Network.
This is Nicole Kelly, host of Loud and Proud here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Loud and Proud, where we talk about issues facing the disability community. A new show comes out weekly. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Loud and Proud. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Christian Heimel bringing absolute fire today on the Cheap Seats. The classic ESPN hockey intro music, that just gives me all the feels, Max. All the feels back to my childhood.
Man, I loved hearing this whenever I opened up the ESPN hockey video games. This was an epic theme. I love it.
It's special. I think of any sport, it's got to be right up there as far as a memorable and exciting intro. It's very special.
Yes, it is.
All right. We're going to give you our brief take on this poll question today. We want you to give your opinion. Go to the Cheap Seats Sports podcast page and vote on the poll question. It's a doozy today, and it's one that Max and I are diametrically opposed on. Which day would you rather have off? The Monday after Super Bowl Sunday or the Thursday beginning the NCAA tournament? Max, the floor is yours.
I am firmly in the camp of give me the Monday after the Super Bowl. The game always starts late. It always goes late. And you will never get to bed on time on Super Bowl Sunday. Give me that Monday off. Make it a 3-day weekend. Maybe you could even plan some measure of a vacation after maybe to the game. You have a chance to actually get there and be there. But
except I wouldn't have wanted to go to Minneapolis like this year.
There is that. But if you give people the Thursday off, are you going to give them the Friday off as well and make it a 4-day weekend and lose 2 days of office productivity? No, I don't think so. Make it a 3-day weekend.
Hey, well, if you have a nice boss and somebody who's also a sports fan, you might get both the Thursday and Friday of the NCAA tournament off. You never know. Is it likely? No. Would I like to see it happen? Yes, and here's why. We all know that we see the stats and the articles every year that worker productivity, office productivity in the United States of America plummets during Thursday and Friday of the NCAA tournament. Why not let everybody take in the sheer joygasm that is the start of the tournament and enjoy those games and not have to be distracted by that work thing or whatever that is called, and let them take the day off, because you all know that everybody's trying to get around their workplace's firewall or sneakily get around and look and watch the game on their phone anyway. You're not going to get games done. In fact, you're probably going to get less productivity from your employee if they're irritated about not watching the tournament.
You make a fair argument there, but I will argue people are more inclined to celebrate the Super Bowl and you get half the country to tune into that game. Give me Monday off.
All right, Max thinks Monday. I want the Thursday and maybe the Friday if your boss is feeling generous of the NCAA tournament off. Quickly wrapping up our show this morning on Wednesday, March 28th here in the cheap seats, where we have given you a multitude of varied and interesting perspectives. Even though we didn't pay a lot for our ticket, we didn't pay anything, giving it to you every week on the Cheap Seats Sports Podcast. Max, Weird and Wild Wednesday. I will start today.
Please
How
do.
about this? In the UK, in West Bay in Dorset at one of their golf courses, the English and Europeans love their golf. According to the mirror.co.uk website, a crazy round of golf in which the Europeans and the English love their sport, and the Scottish that they created love their sport so much that they did not let a natural disaster stop them. They were playing near a bunker on a hole on a course near West Bay and Dorset in the heart of Broadchurch. This was from a couple of months ago. They were living on the edge. 2,000 tons of rock on the edge of this hole on the top of this sort of mountain near this bunker was literally collapsing. If you go to the Mirror website, you can see the pictures, this chasm of the earth crumbling beneath it. This is literally like 50 feet away from the sand dune on this hole. You can see these pictures of the players still playing golf and saying, the hell with this sandy hazard. We have a more difficult one to contend with. But we don't care because we're going to play this beach course. We're going to play through. We don't care what's happening, as our lives could be ending and we could be plummeting to our death around us.
Well, I guess you die happy, I guess. You die and play golf.
You can play golf despite the natural disaster. All kinds of credit from me to the English and the Scottish for playing the sport they invented and saying, the hell with this sinkhole, this piece of land falling, we're going to play through.
Well, mine's not necessarily death-oriented crazy, but it definitely has some craziness to it. I know we probably will never bring up cricket again for a couple of months, but I want to bring up a controversy in South Africa.
Are you kidding me? We're definitely going to bring it up. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, so so this past weekend, South Africa and Australia were having a match. It's called a test in cricket. And in this test, the Australian captain, Steve Smith, and one of his teammates, Cameron Bancroft, admitted that they had a plan to tamper with the ball ahead of the game. So
oh, no.
They got caught with ball tampering. Now, ball tampering in cricket is A, very easy to do, apparently, and
Max,
B,
really quick, can you just say
yes?
Ball tampering for me again?
No, just to spite you, I will not do it. So it's very easy to do. Actually, even playing the ball on a bounce to the thrower can be considered ball tampering. Dang it, I did it again. If you do it often enough that the umpire catches you. Now, this is a level 2 offense in cricket. There are 4 levels of offenses. One is like showing dissent at an umpire's decision and like disagreeing. So Bryce Harper probably would not be a good cricket player.
He'd probably be gone.
Yeah, he'd probably be gone. Level 2 offenses are things like using any seriously obscene language, inappropriate contact. Level 3 offenses are threats of assault, intimidations of umpires, and level 4 offenses, the highest one, actually assaulting another player or an umpire.
Do not tell me this happened.
Yes, it happened. 2 members of the Australian cricket team actually tried to tamper with the ball in play, and they were suspended from play. They might have their careers over. Australia's cricket council is probably going to come down harder on them than the International Cricket Council did. This is a serious offense, but it's one that was so avoidable.
It's avoidable if you just stop tampering with balls. I mean,
yeah, I guess so. Why would anyone want to do that? Oh, wait, Patriots.
Yes. Not what I was going for with the ball reference, but we could go with that one too. I was a little more dirty having fun with that there, but
I'm thinking back to Deflategate.
Okay. Still a funny ball reference, a funny ball moment. You said ball too much today. That will do it for a Weird and Wild Wednesday. Max Wolpoff, Jeffrey Chiles, bringing you the sky-high view of sports every week in the Cheap Seat Sports Podcast. Go right now to our Facebook page, Cheap Seat Sports. Vote in the poll question. Monday after the Super Bowl, Thursday, Friday, potentially of the NCAA Tournament. Which would you rather have off? Go follow us on Twitter, social media, Cheap Seat Sports, Jeff J. Chiles. Max Wolpoff, your Twitter.
MAX_WOL, YOFF.
There it is. Give the man a follow. That will wrap it up for today. We hope you enjoyed it. Final Four, Frozen Four, MLB, best time of the year. Hope you enjoyed the podcast and the Cheap Seats.